All right, let's talk about something that millions of people deal with, but is so often just brushed off as being shy. We're diving deep into social anxiety, what it really is, where it comes from, and most importantly, what you can actually do about it. You know, a member of the Healthy Gamer GG community just summed it up perfectly with this quote. It's not just feeling a little nervous, right? It's that intense feeling where your brain just hits a wall, stops, goes completely blank. If that sounds even a little bit familiar, then you are definitely in the right place. So here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll nail down what social anxiety actually is. Then, we'll get into the signs and some pretty surprising roots that start in childhood. From there, we'll move into some practical self-help strategies and break down what professional treatment really looks like. Okay, so first things first, to really get a handle on this, we have to look past that simple shyness label and get into what the clinical definition is. So, social anxiety disorder, often called SAD, isn't just a fear of people. It's this really intense, ongoing fear of being judged by them. The absolute core of it is the fear that you're going to do something that makes people think you're awkward or weird or foolish, that you'll get a negative review, so to speak. So, what's the real difference between this and just being shy? Well, think of it like this. Shyness is a personality trait. It's part of who you are. Social anxiety disorder, though, is different. It causes real distress and gets in the way of your life. It can make you avoid social situations entirely, and it often shows up alongside other conditions, which you just don't see with shyness. And to give you a sense of just how common this is, get this. In any given year, about 1 in 7 adults is dealing with some kind of anxiety disorder. And here's the kicker. Social anxiety is the most common one of them all. This is not some rare thing. It's a huge part of the human experience. In fact, if you look at the data, this survey shows social anxiety disorder is more common than both generalized anxiety disorder and panic disorder. I mean, we hear about those all the time, right? These numbers really help you see just how many people out there are quietly navigating these exact same fears. Okay, so let's zoom in a little bit. What are the specific fears that are really driving this thing? And when does it all start? The fears that come with social anxiety can be super specific. It's not just a vague feeling. It's the fear that people will see your anxiety, that you'll blush or sweat or shake. It's the fear of looking awkward, of saying something dumb, or, and this is a big one, of your mind just going completely blank. It can even be the fear of being watched while doing something simple, like eating a meal or signing a receipt. Now, understanding the timeline here is so important. The median age this all starts, just 12 or 13 years old. Think about that, middle school. These fears then tend to get stronger through the teen years, and if it's left untreated, social anxiety can often lead to other things like major depression and adulthood. It really shows how things that start early can have these long-lasting ripple effects. So if it starts that young, you have to wonder, what puts a person at risk? Well, some really fascinating research has pointed to a specific potential origin story that starts even earlier than you might think. Which leads us to the big question. Can the seeds for this intense social fear really be planted way back in our first few years of school? Well, it turns out the answer is a pretty clear yes. There is this major study that found something like a one-way street. It showed that having trouble with social communication as a little kid can be a direct risk factor for social anxiety later on. It kind of makes sense, right? If you struggle to communicate, you might get negative reactions from other kids, which then teaches your brain that social situations are dangerous. So here's how they figured this out. The study followed kids for years. They found that kids who had social communication issues around age 7 were way more likely to have social anxiety symptoms pop up between ages 10 and 13. But, and this is the really interesting part, the reverse wasn't true. Being anxious at age 7 didn't predict communication problems later on. The arrow only points in one direction. Okay, so understanding where this comes from is huge, but it leads to the most important question of all. What can you actually do about it? Let's walk through a really powerful way to reframe how you think about social situations. Dr. Alok Kanoja from Healthy Gamer GG has this absolutely brilliant analogy. He says to think of chatting like a sandbox game, like Minecraft. There's no big arrow telling you what the quest is. There's no clear objective. And that uncertainty is exactly why our brains can just freeze up and go blank. We're looking for a goal that just isn't there. So the trick is to give your brain a new, much simpler goal. First, just accept that the goal of a conversation is vague. That's fine. Then set yourself a new, super low-stakes mission. Forget about trying to be charming or successful or liked. Your new goal is just this: learn one small thing about the other person and share one small thing about yourself. That's it. It's a clear, doable quest marker for your brain, and it shifts your focus from your own anxiety to simple, genuine curiosity. Now, for a lot of people, a strategy like that can be a total game changer. But when social anxiety is causing serious problems and really impacting your life, it's important to know that professional treatments are out there and they are incredibly effective. So, clinical guidelines really point to two main paths that are backed by science. On one side, you have cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT. That's a type of therapy that teaches you concrete skills to manage your thoughts and actions for the long haul. On the other side, you have medication like SSRIs, which can help manage the symptoms, and it's often used right alongside therapy. So, what does CBT for social anxiety actually look like? Well, it's not just random chatting, it's a structured program. You start with the foundation, which is all about understanding your own anxiety. Then you move into the action phase, where you learn how to challenge those anxious thoughts and slowly, safely face the situations you fear. And finally, there's the maintenance phase, which is all about making a plan to handle setbacks so you can keep moving forward. So, how do you know when it's time to reach out for that kind of help? Well, if your anxiety is causing you a lot of distress, if it's messing with your daily life, or if it's stopping you from doing things you want to do, whether that's at work, at school, or in your relationships, that's a really clear sign. And using something like alcohol to get through social events is another huge red flag. The most important thing to know is that real, effective help is available. And that kind of brings us full circle. Let's go back to that sandbox game idea. If social interaction is a game and you get to write your own rules, what's just one small rule you could change for yourself right now to make it just a little bit easier and maybe even a little more fun to play?